Hello again, everyone, and welcome back to Reddit Aliens. I'm John, and as always, thank you so much for being here. A good topic. Let's do it. Divers and water lovers. What's something you've seen or discovered in or on the water that creeped you out? Please remember to like, share, and subscribe. I swam out into the middle of a lake in northern Wisconsin on a warm summer day. I was floating on my back, just relaxing. After a bit, I started thinking about how deep the water was, and then about a horror movie I'd recently seen that featured a giant monster bursting up through the water in a lake, not unlike the one I was floating in. I started to feel kind of nervous. Suddenly, I heard the most god-awful roar, as if the lake were exploding beneath me. Terrified, I bolted up to tread water, only to see the trailing smoke from a SAC fighter jet that was practicing flying under radar. So I'm in Cancun, Mexico with my host family, an exchange student. There's this hotel that's surrounded by a river thingy that you snorkel in. I can't sink, thanks, body fat. So I don't have a life jacket. I'm about a mile away from swimming into the river when I see something interesting at the bottom. I struggle downwards. The water was maybe 9 to 12 feet deep, and I see it's a conch shell. What a perfect present for my younger host sister. It's her birthday today, and she loved it. I keep trying to swim to the bottom, only to get pulled back up over and over by my own mass. It's been 30 minutes, and I have a headache. I'm not going to give up that easily. I manage to get a hand on the shell and pull it toward me. Victory. I have a sudden, sharp pain in my stomach. I drop the shell in surprise, and I see a little blood coming out of a new wound. I swim to land and investigate the mark on the shore. The wound was bizarre, shallow, but in a shape that looked like a bite from human molars. I've been pinched by crabs plenty of times, and this looked nothing like a crab pinch. I didn't feel like one either. I couldn't figure out what was living in that shell. I scoured the internet and my zoology textbooks, but nothing matched my bite marks. To this day, I still don't know what bit me. Bodies. One summer at my cousin's lake house, my cousins and I were out swimming, and at one point, my sister started screaming bloody murder. All the adults jumped into the lake to drag her out. It turns out she had seaweed wrapped around her leg. What our parents hadn't told us was that a man had drowned in the lake and his body hadn't been recovered yet. He washed up on our shore the next day. I'm still a little scared to swim in that lake. It was my first deep wreck dive, and I was venturing into the hold of a sunken fishing trawler. At the bottom of the dark hold, I found a full-size skeleton. My wife and dive buddy freaked out and swam straight into the wall. She dropped her dive light, which settled 20 feet below between the skeleton's legs. I dove down alone to get it, because scuba gear is expensive. Up close, that skeleton was obvious plant. Not necessarily something I found, but while swimming in my town's reservoir, I wanted to see how deep the reservoir went. After diving down at least 15 feet, my feet hit an area of water that turned deathly cold and sent shivers right through my body. I went straight to the surface after that. I don't plan on seeing how deep the water goes anytime soon. Just going to start this off by saying I'm an idiot when it comes to sea life. When I was little, I would grab smaller moray eels, chase barracudas so I could watch them, would pet sea turtles with shells the diameter of 3 feet or more. But one thing that really scared the piss out of me is when I went down probably 20 feet to grab a big conch shell I saw, and just as I grabbed it, an octopus tentacle the width of my forearm grabbed my arm and squeezed me against the shell. I managed to pull it off me, although it definitely was tough to do. The efforts are strong. Needless to say, I surfaced, went back down to look at the perpetrator, then noped away from it while I still had my fingers intact. We dived in Palau once, and we're about 100 feet. There's a wall on one side of us, and then the ocean just drops as far as the eye can see on the other side. A tiger shark pulled up next to us and just started swimming next to me. like I'm his dive buddy or something. At first I didn't care, but after a few minutes I started to feel uncomfortable. We kept looking at each other, and he was a good 6 feet, if not a bit more. After a few minutes, a school of yellowfin tuna appeared near us, and all of a sudden that shark decided he wanted one, and just dive-bombed out and cut one of those tuna in half in a split second. A couple more sharks appeared and cleaned up the rest, and they all swam off quietly like you do. It made me realize how lightning fast those things are, and how absolutely bad they are. Okay, here's a fun one. It made me feel like a bitch at the time, but now I look back and laugh. Snorkeling on the Gulf side of Mexico just after high school. I had set up a day beach in a good location, and the water dropped to about 20 feet deep, just a short distance offshore. Things are going well. We're seeing just hundreds of fish and a small school of puffers. I didn't even know they schooled, which scared a few people. So at one point, I'm just swimming back up to the shallow beach and turning around to swim backwards when I see, 6 to 12 of these small fish, white bodies with yellow fins, right off the end of my flippers, are swimming hard, like chasing me. Moments later, I'm scrambling up on the sand like a shark is right on my ass. Did you do the whole look around to see if anyone noticed me being a fool thing? In retrospect, they probably liked the current I was generating with the flippers or something. I know they weren't dangerous. There's just something truly frightening about so much smaller than yourself being aggressive or chasing you. TL, DR. Chased by tiny, probably harmless fish while snorkeling scared the crap out of me. I mean, I'm not judging you. When you're out of your natural element, small things may seem more significant. So, sometimes even me, when I'm in comfortable areas of the woods, I know like the back of my hand, but it's after sunset and getting really dark. You're kind of more sensitive to sound and light or tiny fish. Cool. I was diving off the coast of Manly Island near Sydney during my gap year. We were told to stay away from the caves and whatnot because of common sense, what with sea snakes and such. Me and 3 friends jump in and swim for a bit. We're at the edge of a reef just checking out some coral and junk. Me and another guy swim to the very edge of the reef to check out the deeper bits, not going down too far of course, and swim past a small crevice. It was so small we didn't even notice it. I turned my back to it for a bit to check where the other guys are, and my buddy starts shaking the bejesus out of me and is frantically pointing toward the crevice. I turn, already expecting a demon or some monster, and squeezing out of the crevice comes this effing enormous blob of maroon flesh and suckers. At this point, I wet my pants, no lie. So basically, it was an octopus with the arm span of a paddling pool, and it lunged at the other guy, squirting him with ink and disappearing. I thought it was gone because I couldn't see anything. I saw his arm flailing out of the blackness, and I thought he was swimming to safety, and I was ready to get out of the ocean forever. From a distance, I saw the octopus had him by the right leg and was groping him in a mass of inky horror. I had no idea whether or not to help him. I had never been more scared because I knew octopus could kill people. I was so scared I could barely breathe. I tried to go help him, and when I got close to him, the octopus scarpered further down into the reef. I had never seen a man look so frightened in his life. He swam so fast up to the boat with me in pursuit, and the guy didn't need a ladder to get up on the boat. He just breached the surface and hoisted himself by his arms on the edge of the boat. I called the driver over, and he ran over. My buddy had a chunk of flesh the size of a tennis ball out of his calf. He still has marks from the suckers. Those mofos are strong. To this day, he has never even been to the beach, and he's even scared of baths. I'm a scuba diver, and a few months ago I was diving for fossils in Venice Beach, Florida. This was at the height of all the shark attacks on the East Coast. While I was at the bottom, around 30 feet down, out of the corner of my eye, I noticed some movement. Of course, since I'm wearing a mask, I can't see anything properly out of my peripheral vision, so I turned around to face what was moving, and I saw a dark, round shape headed straight for me. I was using my knife to dig around the seabed for fossils, so I already had it in my hand. I prepared myself for the worst and got ready to fight a shark. Just as the object was getting close enough for me to start stabbing, it turned to the side, and I finally saw what it really was. It was a bird, a large diving seabird, about the size of a Canada goose, is swimming around 30 feet deep, following divers because we served fish. Honestly, it was one of the most terrifying things I've ever experienced underwater, until, of course, I found out what it was. When I was maybe 9 or 10, I was with my family in Corpus Christi for a summer vacation. My parents were on the beach, so I thought I'd go and see how far from shore I could get, for reasons. Before I knew it, I was so far away I couldn't really see land anymore. I was 9. This may be an exaggeration. So I turned and started leisurely swimming back. As I began to paddle back, I felt a tickle on my foot, so I turned to see what it was. All I could see were some blue tentacle-looking things in the water, and a pinched-looking bubble floating nearby. After I stared at it for a second, realizing it was reaching for me, I panicked and raced back to shore. Naturally, since all parents are buttholes when you're 9 or 10, they didn't believe what I had seen, and we left for the day. I forget about it. Go back to my Game Boy or whatever the shit kids did those days, and it's over. Who cares? The next day comes, and we go back to the beach. It's closed. Like Area 51, it is closed. All of the beach, and I mean every square foot, was covered with these half-moon bubbles of air with purple-blue, squishy-looking tentacles coming out of them. I'll cut to the chase here and say that we ran into a local who was walking around barefoot amongst these alien heathens, who informed us that these were Mexican jellyfish who migrate up to the Gulf every so often. Apparently they were poisonous, he continued, until you popped the bubble on its head, at which point he stomped on one. Yep, it popped. My mom nearly fainted. My dad burst out laughing, and I probably just wanted some ice cream. I was scuba diving on the Great Barrier Reef near the Whitsunday Islands. There were tons of fish and a lot of cracking sounds from parrotfish chomping on coral and such. There were so many fish swimming around that I would almost lose sight of my diving buddy. All of a sudden, every single fish was gone, and the cracking sound stopped. I heard nothing but my breathing and saw nothing but my dive buddy looking at me, shrugging his shoulders as if to say, "What the F?" I still have no idea what it was, but something scared the fish enough to make them all disappear in an instant, and all I could do was blow bubbles and share, dude, looks. The hair on my neck is literally standing again just thinking about it. Years ago, I was having a fun day snorkeling in the lagoon of Diego Garcia. On the way back across the lagoon, a pod of dolphins came up and were jumping around the boat. I shut off the motor real quick and jumped in. I'm pretty good. I usually dive down 15 to 20 feet. It was amazing. Dolphins all over the place. I went down about 3 times. Next time I went down, nothing. I looked around, and then they were there, hammerheads. There are hundreds of them all around me. The blood went cold. Panic sets in. Some were small, some were as big as me, over 6 feet. Some were just monsters. I didn't panic. I slowly drifted back up to the surface. When my head broke the water, I suddenly realized that I was surrounded by death incarnate, and couldn't see a single one. I've never felt fear like I did when calmly trying to climb back into the boat. It was amazing. It was incredible. It was utterly horrifying. I was delivering a sailboat from Tortola to Fort Lauderdale, and we becalmed north of Puerto Rico, with no wind at all. It looked like a glassy lake on a calm day. I decided to clean the impeller for the speed log, spinning wheel about 5 feet underwater on the hull, as it wasn't working well. With the crew keeping an eye out, I went snorkeling to chip away the barnacles. So I'm under and chipping away and focused on the job, and I realize where I am above the Puerto Rican Trench, which is 25,000 plus feet. No kidding, deep. And I start to picture how much water is underneath me, and what an insignificant little surface mammal I am. So I muster my courage and look down. The water is super clear, and because there is very little surface disturbance, I can see forever, and of course start to think about what else is down there. at the very edge of visibility, which seemed a really long way down. I could see the occasional large, dark shadow moving slowly, and after a minute or two, I just couldn't take it and noped the F out of there. The shadows could have been caused by the sun on the surface, but I have a good imagination, and it was just too deep. That's almost as high as a commercial airliner flying over land. I got the impeller free, though, and it was a great experience, but I'm not sure I would be happy trying it again. We also used to clip on the stern ladder with the safety harness while the boat was sailing, same passage, and jump off the back with a bar of soap to wash. Being dragged a few feet behind the boat, after that trip, I realized that we were basically trawling for sharks with human bait, and I can't believe we didn't realize it at the time. No issues, but I would not do it again. It makes me uncomfortable just thinking about it. I was snorkeling a couple of months ago in Maui, right next to Black Rock in Kaanapali. For those of you unfamiliar with this spot, it's super popular. And out of nowhere, a huge-ass turtle bumped into me. I've never seen a turtle so big in my life. My boyfriend, who was right behind the turtle, said its shell was at least 4 feet in diameter. This thing could easily bite my neck off and decapitate me. I know turtles are super peaceful, but it scared me to the bone. When I got to the shore, I was telling people about it, and as I was explaining to them the massive size of the creature, some guy who was in his 40s, easily 250 pounds, screamed like a little girl and said the turtle brushed against him. I felt better knowing that a guy built like a linebacker got spooked as well. I went out to Miami Beach late one night with family and friends to scatter my aunt's ashes in the water. We were giving our little speeches beforehand, and about 200 feet out, the water started glowing bright blue and green. It looked really similar to dive lights under the water or glow sticks. We all stopped what we were doing and stared at the lights, trying to figure out what it was. Some guy passing by decided to jump in and find out. He swam about 3/4 of the way, and the lights slowly faded. He stopped and asked us what they were, and we told him. He floated for a second, and the lights suddenly went bright, and were about 10 feet away from him. He noped the F out of the water, and as soon as he got out, the lights went away. We did some research and came up with plankton that were in spawning mode, and him going near them made him stop. I was diving around Fisher's Island, New York. The bottom was very sandy, and I spotted an area about 3 feet, probably closer to 2 feet in reality, in diameter, that looked like it had been smoothed over. I figured something had been buried there, so I found the edge, stuck my knife in, and tried to pry whatever was up. Immediately, the whole thing, whatever it was, started to shift back and forth, rotating an inch or two clockwise and counterclockwise. I removed my knife, took a deep breath, and floated upwards. The shifting continued for a few seconds, then settled down. I swam off, deciding not to F with whatever it was. Someone suggested it was some sort of sea turtle hiding in the sand. I've never seen a sea turtle in the area, and I didn't know they did that. When I first started diving, I was diving on a steep wall about 80 feet deep. The wall was a couple of 100 feet high and highly encrusted. Me and my buddy were swimming along the wall. Everything had been going well when I realized he wasn't nearby. I shone my light away from the wall, expecting to see him, and all I saw was rock. I shone my light up and all I could see was rock. I shone my light down and saw nothing but inky blackness. I am so effed. I'm slightly narked in cold water and 80 feet away. It was exactly then that a very large ferry went by about half a mile from my dive site, creating a low-pitched thum, thum, thum. All of this happened in a course of 10 seconds, and my buddy suddenly appeared below me. I had inadvertently swam into a tight cavern. 2 experiences. First, we were snorkeling in the Bahamas. I was maybe 10, 11 at the time, and we were heading to the shore. I turned around to see a giant barracuda following us extremely closely. It was nerve-wracking. Second story. We're on the beach in Florida. It was a nice, calm day to swim around, and the beach was fully crowded. All of a sudden, my mom jumps up and screams, "Shark!" She had seen a fin swoop up. I'd never seen a beach evacuate so quickly. It was extreme. My dad had the bright idea to go investigate, and he discovered a giant manta ray was the culprit. As it was swimming, its fin cut the water and looked similar to a shark fin.